We are back on this four-wheel drive Nova build, and in today's video I want to get this entire boot floor finished. Maybe. So as you can see, Cookie's back. He's not been on the channel since the summer, but he's back and he's going to give me a hand today doing this. Hopefully we might just have some beer, who knows. So what do we want to do? Well, we need to start off by doing a few little jobs. So I've done a bit of triangulation here, which you've probably seen in a previous video. Need to continue it on this side. And then we also need to make all the inner arch bits for that side to match this side. And then we can start finally fitting the Land Rover boot floor. Now these are 3mm thick, 50 by 30 box section, plenty strong enough and far stronger than the original Nova chassis legs. Beautiful. So once we get the shape roughly right by eye, we'll then move on with the grinder. We each cut out our own piece. Takes a little while and it's a little bit fiddly, but we get there in the end. Then we dress them back and they're ready for welding. I use a couple of magnets and my trusty old hot metal glue gun to join the two bits together. I've just welded this side up, but Cookie doesn't like my welding. He tries to do a better job.
Jesus, man, I can't see shit. Is that even on?
I knew he'd not like my mask. I'm very old school in the sense I
I
tend
can't
to blink a
see
lot.
shit.
Have a go.
Huh?
Play with the settings. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm self-taught.
No, but it's not even switched on.
Is it not?
No.
Oh, I've been using it like that for years.
You got it on grind, mate.
I've got it on grind mode, right. Okay, that might help me then.
Maybe. No,
So, yeah.
it's fucking dodgy.
So basically, he wants to set the welder up so it's right for him. I just go in and then feed it back with a grinder. We kind of get good enough results. And that's okay, but yeah. So I thought this would be funny because this is professional and I'm definitely not professional.
You got my ass cracking that here.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, I probably sound a little bit patronising. I'm not. I am curious to see how he makes it work. Is that better?
I think so.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's meant to sound like frying bacon, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct, someone. Young man. No.
That's too high, isn't it? Right, so we've had a bit of a play with the settings and we think it's pretty good now. And I've just had a go, and I must admit, it does seem to weld a bit better. Oh. There you go, that's perfect. Frying bacon. Yeah. Woo. Right, let's do it. Right, so I've actually ended up welding that in because my welding mask, it's broken. Cookie always forgets he shouldn't swear in this. So, so yeah, it's broke. It's probably been broke a long time. It doesn't actually work properly, which is why I get archived quite a lot. So it kind of makes sense. It's good employing professionals occasionally, isn't it?
Definitely.
But yeah, the welder is actually working a lot better in fairness to him. And it's welded quite nice. So I'm going to order a new welding mask and continue this another day without Cookie, I'm afraid. So fast forward a couple of days, my new welding mask has turned up and it's working beautifully. We can carry on with this once again. Now, a few weeks ago, I did fill in this section off camera. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it yet. But basically, I wasn't happy with the original design of that. I wanted it to look more like this side, which I was much happier with. So I basically replicated it onto that side. So, next job. Need to start putting the wheel arch in on this side. This side's ready to go. I just haven't welded it in yet. This side, we've barely started. So let's make a start on this. So as I want this all to be symmetrical, I'm using the same templates from the other side. So start off by setting this straight edge in exactly the same position as the other side, so it's all nice and square. Then I use the template, mirror it over obviously, transfer it to steel and cut it out. And now I've got a nice reference point to weld it in exactly the right place. Once again, I use welding magnets to hold the piece into position and give it a few spot welds before I start seaming it up properly. Now this welding mask is 90-day difference. I cannot believe how bad the old one was in comparison. So I'm getting on much better now. So that's all welded in now and dressed back. Next job, I need to cut this out of steel. Now again, this is a mirror of the other side. However, it is going to slightly differ because the arch shape is slightly different on this side. So I need to add a little bit to this corner here, just so it clears this section here basically. As you can see, there's a little gap there we want to get rid of, just because that's where the filler net would have been. So yeah, I'm going to make this, but I'm just going to add this corner here, and that should do the job nicely. As always, I use my trusty old combo, which is 2mm steel, 4.5-inch grinder, and a 1mm cutting disc. Right, so that's all cut out now, and I've also put some extra primer on the back. Now, next job I want to do, because I want this to be symmetrical, which could be a problem later down the line because it might not fit properly, but we're going to try, is I want to replicate this wheel arch. So that is the near side wheel arch, which I've cut out, onto this one now. Now these are Transit Mark 7 wheel arches. They're like 50 quid each from Ford, so cheap as chips. Another thing I really like is the swage lines. So for example, if you open the bonnet or the boot, shall I say, at a car show, unless you know what you're looking at, it's kind of going to look factory-ish. If I just make it out of, I don't know, an old oil drum, whatever, it isn't going to. So it's kind of going to look a lot more factory and give it that kind of like original look. So what I want to do, I need to replicate this angle here on this piece here. So I'm going to use the box of my welding mask to make a template, because obviously that needs mirroring onto this. So one thing I do love about building cars is recycling, the amount of things I reuse. For example, this box, perfect template for this job. And if I cut this out, I can then transfer it to the other piece, all being well anyway. So we're a couple of days later and we've had a little issue. So I cut this out and I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to add 10mm just in case we'll make it 10mm longer. But what I did, I wasn't thinking straight. I actually cut 10mm more off than I needed to. So instead of adding 10mm, I cut 10mm extra off, which is obviously quite a lot when it comes to things like this. So what I've had to do, I've had to weld it back on. This is less than 1mm thick, so quite difficult. So I've mixed it back on, I've cleaned it back up. So there's still a couple of little holes I need to address, but they can be done when I'm actually welding it on, I think. But yeah, that's wasted an hour I didn't really need to do, but never mind. So next job, I need to make a lip that's going to go around here to weld onto the turret tower, so this can plug weld through like I did on the other side. So I've cut this out of 2mm steel, 20mm width, and that's going to go underneath here and plug weld on. So the next job I need to do is just mark roughly where this needs to be, so I know exactly where to weld this. So as you can see, I've just clamped it into place to make sure it's in exactly the right position, and I draw around it with a Sharpie, nothing technical here. And then when I go to weld the piece on, I just go in 1.5 mm, say. Now if you was listening, I did say earlier I was going to plug weld this on. I didn't mean that, I meant I was going to plug weld the arch to this piece. This is actually getting properly seam welded to the turret, and it's going to make it nice and strong. So now that bit's on, it's nice and strong, it's time to put the inner arch piece on. This is the bit what connects the original Nova arch to the Transit arch. So as you can see, we've clamped it here, clamped it at the bottom. I'm just going to put a few spot welds on it, just hold it in place, and I'll stitch the ends up nicely. Now that's done, I can put the arch on and I'm really pleased with the fit. So that looks pretty good, I'm pretty happy with that. It's going to need a little bit of fettling, but I think we can start welding that on properly now. So I've pre-drilled small holes in this panel so I can plug weld through. Now as I said earlier, it's really thin, and if I'm honest, quite difficult to weld. It's nothing like the other stuff I'm using. Yeah, you can see why these panels are cheap. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, once it's all welded, address it all back, fit the other part, and don't that look good? So as you can see, that is the entire arch setup now done. Now it does need cleaning back a little bit, it does need titivating, but like I said, I want to make this kind of functional first, just to try it before I then make it look mint. So next job, we're going to try and fit that Land Rover Discovery boot floor. So as you can imagine, I've never fitted a Land Rover boot floor to Vauxhall Nova using Transit Mark 7 wheel arches. I think it's going to work out okay. So I'm going to be honest, I'm not exactly sure where to start with this. I have tried fitting the panel just as it is. It definitely don't fit, which is surprising to be fair. So I'm going to use some genuine Max Peding Rods cardboard. Now this is the box that the coilovers came in, and I'm going to template it, I think, because that's all I can think to do. Unfortunately, I don't have a big enough piece of cardboard, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to do one side, and hopefully it will mirror over to the other side, and I can make it work from there. So start by laying a piece of cardboard down, square the chassis legs, and I use a ruler and a Sharpie to start marking out exactly where I need to cut. I start with the turrets because I want to make sure it interlocks around there nicely, and I start moving on to the shape of the arch. Once I'm happy with that, I cut down the template so it's exactly at the halfway point of the chassis legs.
That way I can mirror it over and make a nice symmetrical template.
And that just slots together like that, and that is bang on in the centre line, which is just where we want it. So I'm pretty chuffed with that. Now, with a bit of luck, if I've made this symmetrical, which I've tried to, but I probably haven't, I turn that over, it should fit the way around. Shall we go? I will say, if this fits, it's going to be a miracle. Not too far off, a little bit. This arch isn't in quite the same place, but that looks pretty good. So yeah, not too bad. Right, I think what I'll do, I'll transfer this to the steel, and then I can fine tune this side, and hopefully it's all going to work.
So draw around the template, cut it all out, dress it all back, and then it's ready to test fit.
So I've just cut one side out and I've flattened the swage lines out. So not the best job, but I've just flattened them down with a bit of steel, just because obviously I want to weld down, I want it to look kind of factory. So smooth that side out, and I've also kind of incorporated that bit there just to make it look a little bit more factory. However, I've discovered it's not going to physically fit. Well, it will physically fit, but I don't think I'm going to physically be able to get it in. So I'm not really sure I'm going to sort that yet. I might have to cut it down the middle, just because it's going to sit under this panel, and obviously I can't physically slot it in. So yeah, not really exactly sure how to fix that. Could be fun.
In the end, I just decide to cut it down the middle and be done with it. Now, if you've got this far through into the video, you're clearly enjoying it, so please do me a favour by hitting the subscribe button.
And there we go, that is one side done. Really happy with the fit, fits nice. All the way around, obviously this bit's going to be pressed down. I'm going to plug weld it all the way around. So I think what I'll do, rather than try and butt weld it, because that might be quite difficult, I'm going to overlap this section here onto the next piece and just plug weld it through. That'll give it a nice, strong factory look. So yeah, I'm hoping that hole there is going to line up with the fuel tank I'm going to make, hopefully. So it's going to work with the fuel sender. If it doesn't, it gives me options for something else, I'm sure. Right,
And look at that, it fits absolutely perfect on the first
side.
I wish. Now, it took quite a bit of fettling. I used a set square to make sure everything was nice and true, because I wanted it to be as perfect as I can possibly make it. Once I got it fitting, and then repeated the same process I did on the other side, I used some 10mm thick steel and a hammer just to flatten the edges out, the swage lines, trying to make it look as factory as possible. And the little ends here, as you can see, I hammer them down, just make them look like they should end there. Once I'm happy with that, I dress all the corners back with a grinder, ready for its final test fit.
Right, so I'm now really chuffed with this. It's starting to really take shape. Next job, I just need to trim along this edge here. So I need to mark it. Well, a good sign.
Like a lot of my builds, I do some things by eye. So I line the spirit level up exactly where I think it should be, mark the piece, and then cut the floor section. Once I cut it, the centerpiece, I flatten down because there is actually a high spot in the Nova floor there. So I need to essentially stretch the metal, which is exactly what I'm doing here.
Right, that's taken a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I've cleaned everything back and I've X-primed it. And I've also drilled all the holes in these panels so I can plug weld through it, make it nice and strong. Now, before you all start commenting, you might think I haven't done enough plug welds. I've done plenty. This is all structural. It doesn't even need a floor to operate. This is just basically fill the hole up. So
I'm going to use my giant set square just to make sure the floor is bang on in the right place before I commit. I use a drill with a blunt and end to drill through the spot weld areas into the metal below it to basically scratch the paint off so I can weld straight through. Now, that is a little top tip from me. Works very well, very effective. If you don't, you just get loads of splatter. Then I take my time, basically plug welding every little hole up. Just take a bit of time, but it's worth it. I manipulate the metal as I go along, push it into place, stretching it, bending it, doing whatever I need to do to make it fit perfectly. Once I get the big section in, and then dress back some of the welds and go into the other section. Repeat the process, use a set square to make sure it's all lined up nicely, get it all tight with the arch, and then start plug welding it exactly the same. In the end, I decided to stitch weld and seam weld the centre section. Thought that way it would be a little bit stronger. This is where I'm joining the two panels together. So I want it to be as strong as possible, really. I plug weld around the rest of the panel and start dressing it back.
That is the boot floor wrapped up and finished, and what we'd call YouTube done. Now obviously there's still a little bit more to do. It still needs a bit more dressing back, cleaning up, a bit more painting, but for now I'm over the moon. I've dressed some of the welds back, I primed it to protect it. Yeah, I'm thrilled. So there we go, that is a Land Rover Discovery Mark 1 boot floor with transit wheel arches in the back of a 4x4 Vauxhall Nova. And if that's not a good enough reason to subscribe, then I don't know what is. Stay tuned for more, guys, and see you later. Bye bye.